Mafia boss hired 2 female bodyguards. They took down 120 assassins in one night. The war room fell silent when they entered. 2 women in black tactical leather standing before Richard Volkov, the man who controlled every shadow from Moscow to Madrid. His lieutenants exchanged glances, some amused, others disgusted. One muttered something in Russian about desperation making men hire secretaries. Another laughed about sending women to face killers. A third spat something crude about what they were really there for. Karen Zhang's expression never changed. Linda's jaw tightened imperceptibly. They heard every word. They understood every language. They filed every face away for later. When Richard's head of security demanded proof, they were worth the oxygen in his war room. Karen slid 2 photographs across the polished mahogany table without a word. The first showed a decimated compound in the Xinjiang mountains. Stone walls reduced to rubble, 83 hostiles eliminated, 0 casualties among the rescued. The second revealed a bombed-out CIA safe house in Kandahar. Structural collapse, hostile insurgents neutralized, 0 American casualties. Linda leaned forward, her voice carrying the weight of Black Ops missions that officially never happened. Our credentials are written in the blood of men who made your mistake. You're not hiring bodyguards, Mr. Volkov. You're hiring the last wall between you and your funeral. 7 days later, 120 professional killers would lie broken across the estate grounds. Mercenaries from 7 syndicates, assassins with 6-figure body counts, special operatives who'd toppled governments. All sent to claim the largest bounty in European criminal history. By sunrise, every single one would be defeated by the 2 women his inner circle had mocked during the interview. If you believe extraordinary strength comes from unexpected places, subscribe right now and comment where you're watching from. Only people who judge books by their covers would scroll past this story. What Richard Volkov didn't know that day, what his lieutenants couldn't possibly understand, was that desperation hadn't made him weak. It had made him smart enough to hire the only 2 people on Earth capable of saving his life. Richard Volkov learned 3 lessons in the Soviet orphanages of post-collapse Moscow. Trust no one, fear makes men predictable, and survival belongs to those willing to do what others won't. By 16, he was running protection rackets for the Saltsevskaya Bratva. By 25, he'd eliminated his boss and absorbed 3 rival operations. By 40, his name carried weight from the Baltic to the Mediterranean. Not just a crime lord, but an architect of the European underworld's new order. His empire was a masterpiece of brutal efficiency. Human trafficking routes that moved through 12 countries like a ghost network. Cryptocurrency laundering operations that turned dirty money into legitimate fortunes faster than governments could track. Nightclubs, construction firms, shipping companies. All fronts for an operation that generated over 800 million euros annually. Richard didn't just control territory. He controlled the infrastructure that made modern organized crime possible. His inner circle was ironclad. Men who'd bled for him, killed for him, built empires on his word. Viktor Kozlov had been at his side for 15 years. The strategist, the diplomat, the brother he'd chosen when biology gave him nothing. Then the attacks began. Prague, 3 months ago. Richard's armored convoy returning from a territorial negotiation. RPG fire that turned 2 escort vehicles into burning metal. His driver's head exploded before Richard could process the sniper's position. He survived because his bodyguard threw himself into the line of fire. Loyalty measured in a body that stopped bullets meant for its master. Vienna, 6 weeks later. A diplomatic gathering with Italian and Albanian counterparts. Poisoned champagne in crystal glasses, served by a waiter who'd worked the penthouse for 2 years. 3 men died choking on their own blood. Richard survived because he never drank at negotiations. Paranoia saves lives when trust is currency for fools. Berlin, 2 weeks ago. Opening night at the Deutsche Oper, Richard's annual display of cultural legitimacy. Third movement of Die Walküre, the moment when Wotan's rage fills the hall. A sniper's bullet passed through the space where Richard's head had been 1 second earlier. He'd leaned forward to hear Victor's whispered comment about the soprano's technique. The woman seated behind him wasn't as fortunate. But nothing prepared him for what he found 4 days ago. His head of security, Dmitry Volkov, no relation but loyal as blood, dead in his personal safe room. Not just dead, executed. The room was designed to be impenetrable. Biometric locks, reinforced steel, no windows, monitored 24/7. Dmitri had survived 20 assassination attempts over 12 years. He'd once killed 4 Chechen enforcers with a letter opener and a coffee mug. Someone had walked through impossible defenses and put 2 bullets in his brain. The playing card nailed to his forehead was worse than the corpse. The death card from a tarot deck, 3 words scrawled in Dmitri's own blood. Solstice. Your end. 7 days. Richard had 7 days before winter solstice. Victor found him staring at Dmitri's body at 3 a.m., bottle of vodka in hand. We need to consider alternatives, Victor said carefully. Outside protection. People with no connections to our world. No reason to betray you for territory or revenge. You want me to trust strangers? Richard's laugh was hollow. I want you alive. Victor pulled out a tablet, showed him footage from Budapest. These 2. They're ghosts, Richard. No loyalties, no agendas. Just skills we can't match. Richard watched 2 women dismantle 18 armed traffickers with surgical precision. He watched until the vodka bottle was empty. Then he made the call that would change everything. Karen Zhang's file in Beijing was marked with a red seal. Traitor, dissident, enemy of the state. The reality was simpler. She'd followed orders until those orders killed 17 civilians in a Xinjiang village that intelligence swore was a terrorist safe house. It wasn't. When she reported the massacre, they offered her a promotion and a warning. When she persisted, they offered her a dishonorable discharge and 20 years in a black site prison. She chose a third option, disappearing into the night with classified intel that made her the most wanted ghost in Chinese intelligence. 3 years later, she existed in the margins of European cities. Prague, Vienna, Budapest, taking contract security work that paid cash and asked no questions. Her precision was legendary among those who knew to look for such things. Her isolation was absolute. No friends, no partners, no one to betray her when Beijing's operatives finally caught up. She slept 3 hours per night, changed apartments every 2 weeks, and trusted exactly no one. Linda's file at Langley was simpler. Killed in action, Afghanistan, 2022. The truth was Messier. Her CIA tactical team had been ambushed outside Kandahar. 8 operators dead in the first 30 seconds of contact. Linda survived by making impossible decisions in impossible circumstances, calling in an airstrike that saved 3 lives, but vaporized the intelligence target they'd spent 6 months tracking. The agency deemed her expendable. They needed a scapegoat for a failed operation more than they needed a survivor asking difficult questions about who'd sold them out. She'd been running ever since. Private military contracts, close protection work, anything that let her skills pay bills while keeping her off official records. The nightmares never stopped. Her team's faces, the sound of that airstrike, the weight of surviving when better operators didn't. Budapest changed everything. Karen tracked the trafficking operation for 3 days. Serbian syndicate moving girls through a warehouse district, 18 armed guards, civilian casualties inevitable if police raided. She planned to go in alone at midnight, non-lethal takedowns, free the captives, disappear before sunrise. Linda tracked the same operation from a different angle. One of the victims was the daughter of a diplomat who'd hired her for protection. The girl had been snatched from a Vienna nightclub. Linda's contract was clear. Retrieve the asset, eliminate the threat. They hit the warehouse simultaneously from opposite entry points. Karen moved through the east corridor with surgical precision. Pressure points, nerve strikes, targets dropping silently. Linda breached from the west with aggressive efficiency. Disarms, takedowns, overwhelming force that shattered defensive positions. For minutes, 18 guards neutralized. 0 shots fired. The captives freed and safely extracted. Karen and Linda never spoke, never acknowledged each other. But their tactical execution was so perfectly complementary, they might have trained together for years. Viktor Kozlov watched it all from a surveillance van 2 blocks away, tracking both women through thermal imaging and motion sensors. When the warehouse fell silent, he made the call to Richard. I found your protection. 2 impossible women. Richard's response was immediate. Hire them. Both. They don't know each other. They do now. The chateau sat outside Luxembourg like a medieval fortress reimagined for modern warfare. 30-foot stone walls topped with motion sensors, armed patrols circling manicured grounds, surveillance cameras covering every angle. Karen arrived first in a rented Audi, combat boots and tactical pants under a worn leather jacket. The gate guards exchanged glances. one muttering in Russian about whether she was lost. Linda arrived 20 minutes later in a black Mercedes, dressed identically but moving differently. Where Karen was controlled stillness, Linda radiated coiled aggression. An Italian lieutenant leaned against the entrance, watching her approach. Non ci credo, he laughed to his companion. They're sending us women now. Both women understood every word. Both filed away every face. The war room was oak-paneled and windowless, dominated by a table scarred from years of violent negotiations. Richard Volkov sat at the head, Viktor Kozlov at his right. 15 men lined the walls. Russian Vorvi Zakwan, Italian Drangheta captains, Albanian enforcers. The testosterone was suffocating. Richard studied them with eyes that had ordered 1,000 deaths. "You're women," he said flatly. "How do you protect me from professional killers?" Karen's response was surgical. "Gender is irrelevant when your attacker is unconscious in 3.7 seconds. I'm foreign because 18 intelligence agencies want me dead for exposing their crimes. That makes me highly motivated to keep us all alive. I don't compete with competent operators, I complement them." Richard turned to Linda. "You're American. Why should I trust you with my life? The last man who underestimated me because I'm a woman ended up with 3 broken limbs and a shattered ego." Linda's voice carried the weight of operations that never made official records. "I'm here because running from my past stopped working. You're here because everyone you trusted is either dead or planning to kill you. We're all desperate. The question is whether you're desperate enough to let go of your pride." One of the Albanian enforcers snorted. Richard silenced him with a look. "Can you even work together?" Richard asked. "Or will you compete like women do?" The room rippled with barely suppressed laughter. "Prove it," Richard said. "Right now." Karen and Linda moved simultaneously, no hesitation, no discussion. Karen flowed left toward the Russian guards, Linda right toward the Italians. The demonstration lasted 18 seconds. Disarms executed with clinical precision, guards hitting the floor before they understood what was happening, weapons cleared and secured. 6 men down, 0 communication between the women, perfect tactical synchronization. The laughter died. Richard stood slowly, looking at Victor, then at the 2 women standing amid unconscious guards. "You're hired. Both of you. Victor will brief you on the threat assessment." As the men filed out, helping their groaning colleagues to their feet, Viktor Kozlov watched Karen and Linda with an expression that wasn't quite satisfaction, wasn't quite concern. Something harder to read. Something that looked almost like fear. Karen spent the first 48 hours mapping vulnerabilities with methodical precision. 17 entry points, 12 blind spots in surveillance coverage, predictable guard rotations that any professional could exploit. She presented her assessment to Richard in clinical detail. Pressure sensors for perimeter detection, non-lethal electric grids disguised as decorative fencing, layered deterrence systems that would slow attackers while gathering intelligence. Linda's report was shorter and more direct. She'd identified 8 optimal breach points, 3 sniper positions with clear lines of sight to Richard's office, and enough security gaps to drive a truck through. Her solution: eliminate the vulnerabilities by turning them into kill zones, establish counterattack positions, prepare for aggressive response rather than passive defense. Richard looked between the 2 reports, then at the 2 women. "These contradict each other." "Because her approach gets people killed," Linda said. "Because yours relies on luck instead of strategy," Karen countered. The Russian and Italian lieutenants exchanged satisfied glances. Victor remained expressionless. For 2 days, the tension was electric. Karen saw recklessness where Linda saw decisive action. Linda saw hesitation where Karen saw calculated control. Richard's inner circle watched, waiting for the inevitable explosion that would prove women couldn't work together under pressure. The conversation happened at midnight on the second night. Karen was conducting a perimeter walk when she found Linda doing the same from the opposite direction. They stood in the north garden, breath visible in the December cold. "You work alone," Linda said. "Not a question. Every partner I've had either betrayed me or died." Karen's voice was flat. "Alone is safer. Alone gets you killed eventually." Linda stared at the tree line. "I fight like I've got nothing to lose because I don't. My entire team died in an ambush someone set up. If I die in combat protecting someone, at least it means something." Karen studied her for a long moment. "Dying doesn't mean anything if the principal dies with you. Living doesn't mean anything if you're too cautious to act when it matters." Neither apologized. Neither backed down. But something shifted. Your kill zones, Karen said slowly. If we integrate them with layered deterrents, attackers get funneled into predetermined positions. Your surveillance systems, Linda replied. If we use them for tactical intelligence instead of just detection, we can turn defense into offense. They spent 3 hours in the garden, combining methodologies that should have been incompatible. Karen's precision with Linda's aggression. Defense with offense. Ice with fire. When Richard's lieutenants discovered the integrated security plan the next morning, the satisfaction drained from their faces. The two women weren't destroying each other through conflict. They were becoming something far more dangerous. A unified force that covered each other's weaknesses and amplified each other's strengths. Viktor Kozlov read the joint report twice, then locked it in his private safe where no one else would see it. The strategy meeting was routine. Territorial disputes in Prague, shipping routes through Gdansk, cryptocurrency flows that needed laundering. 8 European lieutenants around the table, Richard at the head, Viktor taking notes. Karen stood by the door, Linda by the window. Standard protective positioning. The first guard drew his weapon during a discussion about Albanian border incursions. Karen moved before conscious thought registered the threat. The crystal decanter on the side table became a projectile. 15 ounces of lead crystal shattering the guard's wrist, his pistol clattering to the floor. Linda was already in motion from the opposite angle. A spinning kick that disarmed the second attacker before her elbow drove into his temple with surgical precision. 3 more guards drew weapons. Not just targeting Richard. Targeting everyone. Complete leadership decapitation. The next 12 seconds happened in silence. Karen and Linda flowed through the chaos like water around stones, reading each other's movements without words. Karen created openings. Linda exploited them. Linda drew fire. Karen neutralized threats from blind angles. A 2-person tactical unit that moved like they'd trained together for years, not days. 3rd guard down from a nerve strike to the brachial plexus. 4th guard's knee hyperextended before he could aim. 5th guard managed to fire once. The bullet buried itself in mahogany paneling before Linda's takedown ended his contribution to the massacre. 12 seconds. 5 attackers neutralized. 0 fatalities. 0 injuries to principals. The room sat in stunned silence, Richard's lieutenants frozen with drinks halfway to lips, eyes wide with the kind of shock that comes from witnessing violence that shouldn't be possible. Richard's voice was quiet, controlled. Everyone else, get out. The lieutenants fled. Viktor hesitated, then followed. When only the 3 of them remained, Richard poured vodka with hands that shook despite his best efforts. Who sent them? Linda zip-tied the unconscious guards while Karen methodically searched them. Phones, weapons, communication devices. What she found on the first phone made her blood run cold. Military-grade encryption. Satellite routing that bounced signals through 6 countries. And a photograph. Richard's face centered in crosshairs. Time stamp in the corner reading 72 hours until solstice. She checked the other phones. All identical. All connected to the same encrypted network. This isn't criminal competition, Karen said, handing the phone to Richard. This is government-level coordination. Richard stared at the crosshairs over his face. Intelligence agencies? Or someone with access to intelligence infrastructure? Linda finished securing the last guard. Either way, these weren't freelancers. Someone spent years embedding them in your organization. Viktor suggested I hire you 4 days ago, Richard said slowly. 4 days before they attacked. Karen and Linda exchanged a glance. The same thought unspoken. We need to find out who else is compromised, Linda said. Before winter solstice arrives and the real assault begins. Lockdown came at dawn on day 4. No one entered, no one left. Karen and Linda began their methodical search for surveillance equipment and security breaches, working room by room through the chateau's labyrinthine corridors. The East Wing's maintenance corridor looked like every other service passage. Electrical panels, water mains, HVAC access. Linda noticed the dust pattern first. Clean edges around one panel that should have been untouched for years. Karen pulled it open. Behind the false panel was an operations center that shouldn't exist. 20 monitors displayed every room, every hallway, every exterior angle of the estate. Digital recordings dated back 8 months. Karen scrolled through files while Linda stood watch. Detailed psychological profiles on Richard, his lieutenants, his family. Financial records showing every transaction. blackmail material on every major player in his organization. Communication intercepts that revealed secrets worth killing for. The equipment was intelligence grade. FSB, CIA, or Mossad level. Military satellite routing. Encryption protocols that required government clearance. Linda found the file labeled Solstice Protocol, buried in a subfolder. She opened it, and her blood went cold. Detailed assault plans. 7 crime syndicates coordinating simultaneous entry from multiple vectors. 120 operators total. Weapons manifests. Breach timings. Contingency strategies. And most damning, real-time intelligence support from inside the compound. Karen traced the access logs. This file has been opened 47 times in the past month. All from the same terminal. Which one? Viktor Kozlov's private office. The silence stretched between them, heavy with implications. Linda kept scrolling. A personnel file caught her eye, her own photograph staring back. CIA operational history. The Kandahar ambush. And a name she'd spent 3 years trying to forget. Marcus Chun, the logistics officer who'd sold out her team's position. Now operating as an enforcer for the Albanian faction. He'd be part of the assault. Karen found her own ghost moments later. Colonel Chen Wei, her former commanding officer who'd ordered the Xinjiang operations she'd exposed. Now listed as a tactical consultant for one of the Yakuza teams. They're not just coming to kill Richard, Karen said quietly. They're coming to tie up loose ends. Us included. Richard's voice from the doorway made them both turn. Victor, he's been with me for 15 years. His face was ashen, the color of a man watching his world collapse. That's why he's the perfect mole, Linda said. Long game. Patient. Waiting for the right moment. Richard stared at the monitors, showing his empire under surveillance. Do we kill him? No, Karen said coldly. We use him. He doesn't know we found this. We feed him false information, manipulate his reports to the syndicates, and turn his intelligence network against itself. Richard looked at the 2 women, standing amid the evidence of his trusted advisor's betrayal. For the first time, he saw them not as hired protection, but as strategic assets beyond anything he'd imagined. Tell me what you need, he said. Richard assembled his staff on the morning of day 5. In 48 hours, this estate will become a battlefield. Anyone who stays faces danger I can't fully quantify. I'm offering a choice. Leave now with full severance and my gratitude, or stay with triple combat pay and the knowledge you chose this. 40% left by noon. 60% stayed. Loyalty transformed from obligation into conscious decision. Karen and Linda worked 72 hours without sleep, transforming the chateau into something between a fortress and a trap. Karen installed pressure sensors beneath garden paths that differentiated human weight from animals, motion-activated flashbangs hidden in false entry points, non-lethal electric grids disguised as decorative fencing. Her surveillance redundancies created 360-degree coverage with backup systems for every camera. Communication jammers, strategic choke points, psychological deterrence through visible security that masked the real threats underneath. Linda established kill zones with interlocking fields of fire, improvised explosive deterrents at key breach points, close-quarters combat staging areas. Weapons caches positioned for rapid access. Counterattack routes that would let them flank attackers who thought they had the advantage. Aggressive response protocols that turned defensive positions into offensive opportunities. Together, they created something neither could have built alone. A fortress that didn't just defend. It hunted. At 3 a.m. on day 6, exhaustion finally forced a break. They found themselves in the estate's empty chapel, sitting in pews that hadn't seen worship in decades. Xinjiang, Karen said without preamble. A village command swore was a terrorist safe house. 17 civilians dead because intelligence was faulty, but results were demanded anyway. I reported it. They called me a traitor. Linda was quiet for a long moment. Kandahar. My team. 8 operators ambushed because someone sold our position. I watched them die one by one. I knew it was Marcus who'd sold us out, but I couldn't prove it. I survived by hiding in a mass grave for 18 hours while insurgents executed the wounded. Why did you survive? Karen asked. Cowardice. Linda's voice cracked. I chose myself over trying to save them. That's not cowardice, Karen said. That's tactical awareness. Dead heroes save no one. It was the first time in 3 years anyone had said those words to her. Something broke inside Linda's chest, not destruction but release. For the first time since Kandahar, she cried. Not quiet tears but deep, shaking sobs that carried 3 years of survivor's guilt. Karen didn't offer platitudes or comfort. She just sat beside her, a steady presence in the darkness. 2 broken weapons, learning they might still be human. Outside, winter solstice approached. Inside, 2 warriors prepared to face their ghosts. Winter solstice arrived with a moonless sky and 30 infiltrators breaching the perimeter at 9:47 p.m. Professional stealth tactics, night vision, communication discipline. They hit pressure sensors deliberately, believing they were creating diversions. Karen and Linda's systems differentiated weight distribution patterns. 28 infiltrators dropped to electric nets, flashbang grids, sedative gas. The final 2 reached the north garden before Karen and Linda intercepted them. 7 seconds of hand-to-hand engagement. Both down. 30 down, Linda reported. Phase 1 complete. The second wave hit at 10:23 p.m. 25 military-trained operators with thermal imaging cutting through automated defenses from east and west simultaneously. Karen took the west wing with surgical precision. Environmental takedowns, nerve strikes, psychological warfare through light manipulation. Linda took the east with aggressive brutality. Furniture as weapons, overwhelming force that shattered tactical discipline. 15 minutes of sustained combat left both women bleeding. Karen's ribs grazed by a knife, Linda's knuckle fractured, but neither stopped. 55 down. Phase 2 complete. At 11:34 p.m., 35 specialists blew through the main gate, west wall, and servants' entrance with explosives and heavy weaponry. Authorization to level the compound. This was chaos. This was where synchronized tactics became survival. Karen and Linda moved like twin storms through the main hall, dining room, grand staircase, creating crossfire zones, using each other as tactical anchors, communicating through gestures and absolute trust. 43 minutes of brutal combat transformed the estate into a war zone of shattered glass and unconscious bodies. 90 down, Linda gasped, bleeding from her head, grinning. Getting interesting now. The fourth wave arrived at 12:51 a.m. 20 master assassins, artists of death. Among them, Marcus Chun and Colonel Chin Wei. The central courtyard became an arena. Marcus stepped forward, scarred and massive. Linda, I wondered if you survived. You sold us out. 8 people. My family. Business. Nothing personal. Their fight was savage. Marcus was stronger, more experienced. But Linda fought with 3 years of survivor's guilt transformed into weaponized rage. She took hits that would drop most fighters. She didn't care. She got back up every single time. Final exchange. Feint high, drop low, sweep his legs, elbow strike to his temple as he fell. That was for Kandahar. Karen faced Colonel Chun Wei simultaneously. He circled, smaller and faster. You were my best student. Such a waste. You taught me to follow orders without question. Then you gave me orders worth questioning. Their fight was technical. A chess match where every strike had 3 follow-ups. But Karen had something Chin didn't, redemption. She broke his pattern with a combination developed after leaving the military, ending him with a nerve strike cluster that dropped him instantly. The remaining 18 fell to coordinated precision. 110 down. Phase 4 complete. At 1:47 a.m., 10 rogue intelligence operatives breached Richard's panic room using classified codes. Viktor Kozlov led them, believing Karen and Linda were occupied. The lights went out. Hello, Viktor. Karen's voice came from darkness. Emergency lighting revealed both women standing between operatives and Richard, bloodied, exhausted, unbroken. This is impossible. 120 operators. 119, Linda corrected. You're the last. Viktor attempted to detonate a dead man's switch. Karen's wrist lock snapped bone. The switch clattered uselessly. 120 down. 0 fatalities. Mission complete. Dawn rose over Luxembourg. The nightmare was over. Dawn broke over a battlefield. Every window shattered, every wall scarred with bullets. 120 unconscious assassins being collected by a joint Interpol-European intelligence task force that arrived at 6:47 a.m. The chateau looked like a war zone because it had been won. In Richard's war room, now missing half its furniture, Viktor Kozlov sat in restraints while the truth emerged. He'd been recruited by a shadow coalition within European intelligence agencies 15 years ago. Their goal wasn't just eliminating Richard, but using his death as a catalyst for criminal war that would justify expanded operations, black budgets, and political control over organized crime territories. The 7 syndicates were pawns. The €50 million bounty was funded through intelligence slush funds. The entire operation was designed to reshape the European underworld while providing cover for off-books government actions. But Karen and Linda's defense had been so effective, so public, that the conspiracy was now exposed. Interpol had evidence. Journalists had leaks. The Shadow Coalition was scrambling. Richard stared at the man who'd been his brother for 15 years. "I trusted you. You were a means to an end," Victor replied coldly. "Nothing personal. Everything's personal when you try to murder me." Karen stepped forward. "Victor's going to testify. Everything. Every black site, every rogue operation, every politician involved. In exchange for witness protection instead of a shallow grave." "And if he refuses?" Richard asked. Linda's smile was razor-thin. "Then we make the testimony unnecessary through other means." Victor started talking immediately. On the rooftop at 7:23 a.m., Karen and Linda watched the sunrise, battered, alive, transformed. "We made a good team," Linda said. "We made an exceptional team," Karen corrected. Richard joined them with expensive cognac and 3 glasses. "You saved my life. Name your price." "We don't want money," Karen said. "We want a partnership," Linda continued. "You have resources, networks, intelligence across 12 countries. We have skills and a list of people who need to answer for their crimes." "You're proposing we hunt the shadows," Richard realized. "We're proposing we burn them down," Karen said. "Every black site, every handler, every politician who sanctioned murder while pretending their hands are clean." Richard considered these 2 warriors who'd transformed his world. "That's a war." "We're already at war," Linda said. "We're just choosing our battlefield this time." Later, in the ruins of the war room, Karen and Linda stood before a wall map marked with 14 locations, Shadow Coalition operation sites. "Where do we start?" Linda asked. Karen's smile was cold and purposeful. "Everywhere. Simultaneously. They taught us to be weapons. Time to show them what happens when weapons choose their own targets." 120 assassins neutralized. One night. 2 women. But this was only the beginning. Marcus Chun would face trial for the Kandahar ambush, Linda's testimony finally giving her fallen team justice. Colonel Chunwei would answer for Xinjiang war crimes, Karen's evidence exposing operations her government tried to bury. Victor's testimony would shatter the Shadow Coalition across 14 countries. Karen found what she thought impossible, a partner she trusted completely. Linda found what she needed desperately, redemption through protecting rather than avenging. If you believe true strength comes from partnership, from lifting each other higher rather than tearing each other down, subscribe right now and comment where you're watching from. Only those who underestimate quiet strength would scroll past this truth. And if you want to see what happens when Karen and Linda take the war to the shadows, make sure you hit that notification bell. Because 120 Assassins was just the warm-up. The real battle starts now.